So we are talking about cycles found in nature. I'm going to demonstrate the carbon cycle, and I'm kind of doing this through hillbilly screen recording here, so bear with me. It might look stupid, but there's a reason for it. All right, so with the carbon cycle, well, first of all, carbon is just a naturally occurring element in our universe. It's actually the fourth most abundant element. There it is, right there on the number 6 on the periodic table. And it's one of the most abundant elements in the entire universe, and all living things are composed of carbon, which is why it's important to us, since we're living things and depend on other living things. A few bits of terminology before we get into the actual cycle. So one thing we'll be talking about, fossil fuels. Those are things such as coal, oil, natural gas. Well, fossil fuels are largely carbon-based, coming from the decay of living things from millions of years ago that made the coal or oil or natural gas. And carbon does a very good job of holding on to energies, which is why we use them for fossil fuels. Carbon is also essential for all life processes, such as, plants use a thing called photosynthesis, where they use the sun's energy to combine with water and carbon dioxide, there's carbon in that obviously, to make food, which also contains carbon, and give off oxygen. And then animals do the exact opposite. It's called respiration or cellular respiration. So it's just the opposite of photosynthesis. Like you breathe in oxygen and break down that food that once again has carbon in it and convert it into energy, and then water and carbon dioxide. So there's a little background. Let's get into the actual cycle. Carbon is one of the most abundant elements in the universe, and it certainly plays a big role here on Earth. So we've got it all over the place. Now let's look here. So here we have, carbon dioxide is just naturally in our atmosphere, so I'm going to start up here. Now, plants, they breathe in carbon dioxide for photosynthesis, so then that's trapped in the plant. Now, some of those plants, or the leaves from the plants, like when they die in the fall, or those decaying plants, that puts carbon into the soil. Or we have some animals that eat the plants, like here, these are corn plants, in case you can't tell. So there's can you tell what animal that is? Yeah, raccoon, good job. So the animals eat the plants, so now that the carbon is in the animal, animals breathe out carbon dioxide, which helps put it back into the atmosphere. Think about the millions of years ago, the fossil fuels that we now have, those came from decaying plants and animals, mostly plants. And so nowadays, when we burn these fossil fuels, think about, I've got a little coal plant there, or cars, airplanes. Then those are putting massive amounts of carbon, which is a little bit of a problem, which we'll get into later. But anyway, so that's kind of in a nutshell how the carbon cycle works. So why do we hear so much about carbon emissions and alternatives to fossil fuels these days? Well, it really comes back to what's on the left side of this diagram, and I'm not going to get into a long-winded debate over this right now because it's a very complex subject. But basically, one reason we're trying to wean ourselves off of fossil fuels, besides the fact that you'll eventually run out, is it's this fact here that all this carbon does a great job of storing energy. Well, all this that's been stored for millions of years, now just really over probably the last 150 years, we've really started using a lot of fossil fuels for transportation and power generation. So that has put a lot more of this carbon back into the atmosphere at a faster rate than just with the normal cycle that we see over here. So that's part of why you hear a lot more about, like electric cars and alternative energy sources. All right, the last thing we've got for you with our carbon presentation is a trivia question. So, carbon, it is the most, or no, it's the fourth most abundant element in our entire universe. So not just on Earth, the entire universe. Can you name the 3 elements that are more abundant than carbon? Oh, yes, good guess. Hydrogen is number 1. Fantastic job. Helium. Yeah, helium is number 2, and they are the lightest 2 elements. What about the third one? Going once, going twice. Oh, you got it. It is oxygen. All right. Great job, everybody. And I hope I didn't bore you too much and that you might have learned a little bit about carbon.